We'll see you on the radio tomorrow. And remember, keep it locked right here because Shannon Bream is up next. Another phenomenal show on tap. And remember, Twitter, Facebook, we'll have a poll up later on tonight. I want you to participate. And remember, this is your country. And that means we're all invested in the results of all these debates. Shannon Bream,
right,
up next.
You are. Laura, thank you so much. Here's what's coming up tonight.
The search for a definitive answer about what sparked the Russia investigation intensifies as the debate over government spying heats up in Congress.
When you're talking on an FBI phone and you are at work conspiring with other workers to bring the president down, that is a real problem.
Tonight, the president wants to know whether the FBI relied on an unverified dossier in order to justify spying on his campaign. He's joined by influential Republicans asking tough questions.
Why would the FBI use a Democrat-paid-for dossier to actually surveil another campaign?
We'll dig deeper on the push for answers as we wait to see how soon the details behind the dossier could be made public. And as President Trump gets slammed for making an allegedly racist comment amid immigration talks, Democrats slammed their own House leader for quote-unquote offensive remarks about congressional negotiators.
The five white guys, I call them.
Steyerwalt is here with analysis. Plus, congressional firebrand Louis Gohmert responds to the latest wheeling and dealing on DACA. And he's got a warning about impeachment. And Inside Edition correspondent Megan Alexander on Hollywood A-lister James Franco facing a bombshell sexual misconduct report.
Hello and welcome to Fox News at Night. I'm Shannon Bream in Washington. Just in, we're getting new information on the battle between the GOP and the FBI. The president all but accusing the Bureau of aligning itself with the Obama administration in an effort to undermine his campaign last year. That comes in the form of a presidential tweet ahead of a vote on the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act. Ed Henry is working his sources tonight on that front. Meanwhile, White House sources attempting to clarify the president's comments tonight about immigrants seeking special temporary protected status. We've got team coverage on those breaking stories. Leland Vittert covering the president's controversial comment. But first, we begin with Ed and what he's found on the FBI. Good evening, Ed.
Shannon, good to see you. Breaking tonight, President Trump bluntly told the Wall Street Journal that the pro-Clinton text exchanged between top FBI officials before the last election amounted to treason, an apparent reference to those messages about FBI officials wanting a so-called insurance policy in case Hillary Clinton lost. Those were messages that went back and forth between Peter Strzok and Lisa Page. Well, Fox News is now hearing from two separate sources tonight that more text messages between these FBI officials are going to be released soon, meaning this case is heating up, just as sources familiar with the various investigations are also telling us that top lawmakers in Congress have now privately gotten a look at the warrants that FBI officials submitted to the secretive FISA court to justify the Obama administration surveillance of Trump officials. This fits with a report from Byron York of the Washington Examiner yesterday saying that these lawmakers are using those documents to edge closer to answering, quote, the question of whether the FBI used unverified material from the dossier, a Clinton campaign opposition research product, to apply for permission to spy on Americans. This is why several Republicans in the House are now urging Speaker Paul Ryan and the Trump administration to declassify this information so the public can see it.
There is a growing body of members who believe that this dossier was a significant factor in terms of the FISA warrant. But I think that there's a broader question here. Why would the FBI use a Democrat-paid-for dossier to actually surveil another campaign?
Now, some of these reports may have impacted the president's thinking this morning as he lashed out at the so-called Section 702 of the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act, which his own administration wanted reauthorized today so they could use the law to chase down terrorists. But after watching a segment today on Fox and Friends, the president lashed out, quote, House votes on controversial FISA Act today. This is the act that may have been used with the help of the discredited and phony dossier to so badly surveil and abuse the Trump campaign by the previous administration and others. That was the president. Democrats tried to jump all over that shift in position to delay the vote. So almost 2 hours later, the president clarified, tweeting, with that being said, I've personally directed the fix to the unmasking process since taking office, and today's vote is about foreign surveillance of foreign bad guys on foreign land. We need it. Get smart. Now, White House Press Secretary Sarah Sanders was asked about all of this. She insisted that distinction the president made was not confusing for her and said she was sorry that it may have confused the media, and apparently some lawmakers in both parties. The House, by the way, ended up passing it after that clarification, but it still faces an uncertain fate in the Senate, where Rand Paul is threatening a filibuster because of privacy concerns, Shannon.
All right, Ed Henry live for us tonight. Thank you very much. Outrage and condemnation pouring in tonight. President Trump appeared headed toward a deal on immigration, and now he's getting thumped across the board. Leland Vittert is here to break down what was said as the administration now attempts to clarify his comments. All right, first of all, Leland, what was the president talking about?
Well, they are certainly burning the midnight oil at the White House comm shop. A person familiar with the president's thinking tells Fox News his comments was about an extraordinarily nuanced view of U.S. immigration policy. His detractors say it's proof of the president's racist tendencies. You be the judge. The colorful language came as lawmakers presented an immigration deal to the president, and no one in the room is denying the president said this. Why are we having all these people from, insert expletive, whole countries come here? Lawmakers at the meeting said they were taken aback by the locker room talk that set the Twitterverse ablaze and cable TV into a full-on inferno.
We're going to send people back from the richest nation in the world? Shame on Donald Trump. This was a racist remark, and we need to call it for what it was.
I didn't actually interrupt you. I don't know.
Well, I don't understand what the sin is. You're not allowed to point out that other countries aren't as good places to live as America? Like, what is the problem?
There is definitely an issue here because basically what's happening here is that the president is connecting and articulating the same vision that we saw in Charlottesville.
All right, now for the context of said bombshell remark. Scene: a meeting of bipartisan lawmakers talking about this comprehensive immigration deal at the White House. More on that deal in just a minute. The president's remarks spoke specifically to a part of the proposal providing special relief to immigrants from the poorest, most crime-ridden countries in the Western Hemisphere. Haiti, as an example, a country where the State Department notes violent crime, such as armed robbery, is common. It is the poorest country in the Western Hemisphere, where less than 4 in 10 people have electricity and one of the lowest per capita GDP in the world. On the record, the White House says certain Washington politicians choose to fight for foreign countries, but President Trump will always fight for the American people. On background, a person who tells Fox News they are familiar with the president's thinking, offering a far more refined view of the policy, telling that the president really meant if the U.S. is going to have special provisions for immigrants, why have them from countries with a lower skill set and who may be more of a stress on benefits in the American system? As my grandmother would say, not necessarily what you say, but how you say it. Clearly, Shannon, how the president said this and addressed this policy, soaking up, if not all the tweets in the world, all the tweets in Washington.
Yeah, and we're going to talk more about this because there are calls, not surprisingly, from the left, but plenty of Republicans who say he's going to have to step up, take responsibility for this, explain it, and apologize for it. We'll have more on that coming up. But now to the substance of what they were talking about. Will there actually be a deal?
Well, that's a great question, and big questions as to whether or not this comment will affect a deal and how it will affect a deal. Democrats continue to threaten a government shutdown until Republicans agree on legal status for the so-called Dreamers. That's kids brought here illegally. This afternoon, a small bipartisan group of senators said they have an agreement in principle on tying legal status to funding for border security as part of a broader immigration reform. Senators Graham, Durbin, Flake, Bennett, Gardner, and Menendez might have a deal among themselves, but those 6 must get a total of 60 senators and a majority of the House, along with the president, to agree with them.
The president is willing to grant legal protections for this population of illegal immigrants in return for adequate security and ending extended family chain migration and ending the diversity lottery. There's no change to those parameters.
Now, I spent the day on Capitol Hill, and both Republicans and Democrats will tell you they are open to a deal with those parameters. But no one has managed to find the magic formula so far. And while the president set a March deadline for Congress to deal with the Dreamers, the government runs out of money and shuts down next week. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi tonight issued a lightly veiled threat of forcing the Republicans into an embarrassing corner.
But there's no point in having another CR unless we have an agreement on DACA and on funding.
All right, so it's unclear if that is a bluff or Democrats will really make a stand. Shannon, they are certainly trying to use the president's remark to tighten the thumb screws on Republicans, as you noted.
Yeah, it is not helpful for him in this debate. Leland Bitter, thank you very much. Tonight, Democrats saying President Trump isn't, quote, even trying to hide the racism anymore, following the colorful language he used to describe third world countries. But House Minority Leader Nancy Pelosi also under attack from members of her own party for saying this about partisan immigration talks, which included her number 2, Steny Hoyer.
The 5 white guys, I call them, you know. You going to open a hamburger stand next or what?
The 5 white guys. Well, Hoyer responding, telling Politico that comment is offensive. I am committed to ensuring dreamers are protected, and I will welcome everyone to the table who wants to get this done. A spokesperson for Pelosi later said her comments were not a question of who's there, but rather who's not there. Well, Chris Direwalt is Fox News politics editor. So, Chris, welcome.
I don't know if I'd be talking about number 2s tonight.
I mean, yeah, that's not where you want to go. What we thought we were going to be talking about is the substance of whether they're inching any closer to a deal. And now we have this controversial comment from the president that's taking up all the oxygen. And just today you were saying you thought maybe he was starting to learn how to get things right. Yeah.
Well, so first, from a point of view of substance, what the president said is going to make a government shutdown more likely. And the way that it makes a government shutdown more likely is that Democrats are going to be more out for blood. We knew that there was going to be a certain point where the Democratic base had a backlash against these negotiations at all, because getting caught negotiating with Trump and other Republicans is not a good look for a party whose base basically wants Trump unprecedented as soon as possible. So this comment will intensify that anger on the left and make it less palatable for Democrats to be negotiating this. So this pushes us closer to a shutdown on the 19th in that way. Is the president learning? I think we have an example today. Watching television this morning, he tweets out the tweet and he nails it. 2 hours later, he takes it back. 2 hours later, he says, okay,
clean up on aisle 5.
Never mind, did that. And the measure passes and he gets what he wants. I think that is a concrete demonstration of, compared to a year ago, back in March, when my phones are tapped and it's 12 tweets, and then the Republicans spend 6 months trying to make it sound true or seem true and running after this thing. It doesn't matter. Well, look, it matters in a larger sense. Who was tapped, where was tapped, what's a dossier, what's an unmasked. All those, I'm not saying those things don't matter. I'm saying from a political point of view, the job is pass your agenda, get the things done that you want done. The president today could have gone down the wormhole into phones tapped and all of that stuff, but he didn't. He pulled back and he said, that tweet didn't exactly read like his own hand, but he took the smart course and he said, okay, let's focus on getting stuff passed, not making myself sound right.
And then we have the comment tonight, which is taking up all the oxygen. This comes in from Representative Mia Love. She's a Republican out of Utah.
And but her daughter of Haitian
immigrants.
Right,
her parents came from Haiti. She says this: my parents came from one of those countries, but proudly took an oath of allegiance to the United States and took on the responsibilities of everything that being a citizen comes with. The president must apologize to both the American people and in the nations he still wantonly maligned. So will he do that?
It just depends on how much time he wants to waste on this. The truth is, this is a comment. People say things in meetings and behind closed doors all of the time that if they were taken out and put into a different context would be totally appalling. I'm sure Nancy Pelosi has said plenty of things behind closed doors in meetings that if it hit the airwaves would be a scandal. But you get caught, you get burned, you get zinged. How long do you want to live there? And remember this, the president has a lot of able and ardent defenders who will waste a lot of time in the coming days explaining why it was correct and right for him to do. This will also be counterproductive. This will also take him further away from the goal of capitalizing on. Just think about it this way. On Wednesday, we were talking about, or on Tuesday, we're talking about, that was a good meeting.
Right.
Successful meeting. They had a tax bill
even
that they
mainstream
passed.
And folks on the left were praising him.
Here we go. Now we're Thursday, and we're at Kofeveville again. We're back in we're back in base versus base, whipped up, blah 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 blah. How long do you want to stay in that space is the question for the president. And one of the ways out is to just say, you know what, I'm sorry, I use salty language behind closed doors. That doesn't reflect our appreciation for the great immigrants who come from countries like Haiti. And I used the wrong term, and I apologize. That's the way that you get out of it.
Is it going to happen?
Probably not. It's probably not going to happen. But you know what? I wouldn't have said 6 weeks ago that the president would have taken back his tweet this morning.
Right.
So again, this is a learning person. We watched him learn how to run for president while he was doing it. We're watching him learn about being in office as he's there. So I can't take anything off the table. Who knows?
Well, listen, every 12 hours there's a new scandal on one side of Pennsylvania Avenue.
It's a good thing we're here late at night.
Yes, it is. Good to see you.
Good. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. All right, tomorrow, the White House is expected to announce a decision on whether or not the president will continue to waive nuclear deal-related sanctions against Iran. French President Emmanuel Macron, in a phone call with the president, reportedly stressed the importance of abiding by the Iran nuke deal. Reuters reported yesterday that presidential advisors were recommending the president not reimpose sanctions on Iran. Well, wheeling and dealing continues on Capitol Hill tonight over an agreement on immigration and DACA. Congressman Louis Gohmert is here to fill us in on what's happening behind the scenes and to respond to the outrage over the president's controversial comments. And we go inside an interview room with a member of an El Salvadoran gang who outlines her terrible crimes in chilling detail. And later, 5 women accuse actor James Franco of sexual misconduct just after he wore a Time's Up pin at the Golden Globes. We'll hear from Inside Edition's Megan Alexander on what it means for Hollywood. As the debate about ending special status for Salvadoran immigrants continues, an MS-13 gang member admits to stabbing a 15-year-old girl more than a dozen times, making a video of the killing with the intention of sending it to MS-13 leadership in El Salvador. Trace Gallagher has the latest on this story. Trace.
Shannon, in January of last year, 13-year-old Damaris Reyes Rivas was taken from Maryland to Virginia by a large group of MS-13 members. And several of those members are accused of attacking Rivas. But it was then 17-year-old Venus Iraheta who, in an effort to avenge the death of her boyfriend, told the 13-year-old Rivas that she would, quote, see her in hell, before stabbing the girl 13 times and slicing off one of her tattoos. Here's Iraheta confessing to the crime.
You need to tell me what you did to her.
I killed her.
How did you kill her?
With a knife. No, I think it was 12 here, then that 13 wasn't here.
When police asked Iraheta if the murder bothered her, she said no. And when they asked why it doesn't bother her, she responded, I don't know. Venus Iraheta is now facing life plus 20 years for the killing. Investigators say the murder of the 13-year-old was all captured on cell phone video with the intent of sending the footage to MS-13 leaders in El Salvador, which is where the gang originated. And now, as part of immigration enforcement and the ongoing DACA negotiations in Congress, President Trump is threatening to end the protected status of some 200,000 Salvadoran immigrants living in the U.S. These are immigrants who are allowed to stay here following a devastating earthquake that hit El Salvador in 2001. Now, Homeland Security says, quote, the substantial disruption of living conditions caused by the earthquake no longer exist. Democrats accuse the administration of tearing families apart. But now there's word this could be a bargaining chip for the president. The Washington Post says Democrats could insist on extending the protected status of Salvadoran immigrants in exchange for giving the president more of what he wants. President Trump certainly hasn't mentioned backing off a decision to revoke the protection of Salvadoran immigrants, but Mr. Trump does have several items on his wish list, including money for a border wall, or at least a good chunk of a wall. Shannon.
Trace Gallagher, thank you very much. Well, around-the-clock negotiations over immigration and government funding continue tonight, but are they being overshadowed by the president's comments? Republican Congressman from Texas, Louis Gohmert, joins us now with his reaction. Great to have you tonight, Congressman.
It was great to be with you, Shannon. Thank you.
You know what the president said. I'm not going to repeat it here. But does it help or hurt your efforts to try to get something done? And I know that you have very mixed emotions about what's been floating around Capitol Hill as a potential solution.
Look, I'm not going to defend his language, but I will defend his frustration. I mean, here we've got people, and the only people they want to talk about being dreamers are people that came into the country illegally. And many of them, you know, people picture young, precious little people, and that most of them a lot of them are middle age. And then we're seeing statistics that a huge percentage don't speak English, even though they were getting free education and all kinds of free things. And you've got these same people that are pushing to keep MS-13ers here even more than they are to help make sure our dreamers who were born in America have that chance for the future. It is so frustrating, and every time anybody in Washington talks about legalization of anyone here illegally, the Border Patrol says they get these surges, and they've been getting them since August. And so it is a frustrating time, and the economy should be taken off after the great tax bill we got done, and yet when you keep overwhelming America with people coming in illegally, it is difficult to get things done. And let me note one other thing, Shannon. Isn't it interesting, the people that keep demanding something immediately, some immediate amnesty, legalization, they also demand that there be no wall. They don't want border security. They want to keep doing this. And of course, it's pretty transparent. They don't care about the people whose wages have been stagnant or been lowering or been unable to find jobs. They care more about getting people in who don't speak the language, who they can manipulate into voting for their party. It ought to tell you something about the party.
There's a lot there to unpack, Congressman. But let's do this. It sounds like that there are plenty of people on both sides of the aisle that want to see some kind of solution for these roughly 800,000 people who were brought here. They're not children now, but they were brought here as kids, and many of them are in schools or in the military or in other service or employment here.
And many of them say they were brought here as kids, and they weren't.
That's true. There are those cases for sure. So now, though, as they move forward to some kind of solution, there's talk of some special legal status for them. Some are even talking about citizenship. I want to play something from Congressman Hurd. He's from your state. Here's what he said.
Ultimately, it's a DACA fix plus smart border security.
Are you concerned that offering the green card and pathway to citizenship might drive away some Republicans from wanting to sign on to the bill?
No, I don't think it is.
Okay, he says no. Are you guys going to get to 218, the magic number in the House, if there's a path to citizenship in this package?
Look, let's be clear. Anybody that says that we're going to be able to give some kind of legal status without giving citizenship is crazy. As soon as there is any legal status at all, then the people will come rushing in who are willing to agree to a legal status but not citizenship and say, oh, now you want to have a 3/5 of a person? Oh, no, and they'll be condemning. Let's be clear. Anybody that gets legal status is going to end up being made a citizen. But every time we talk about this kind of process without securing the border, more people come in. The border really, Shannon, the border has got to be secured.
But does it have to be done with the wall?
Does
it have to be done with a physical wall, or can you use a combination of other
There are places. Yeah, there are places there has got to be a wall. There are places. It doesn't have to be 2,000, 2,100 miles, but there are places, hundreds of miles, where we do need it, and that needs to be done. And we saw in '86, if you put border security and an amnesty, a legalization in the same bill, you will get the amnesty every time, and you will never get the border security. So we have got to not put the cart before the horse, or we're going to run this cart and horse right off the cliff.
Yeah, well, we know that you're not alone. There are many on the right and the left unhappy with what they're hearing proposed so far.
Like the people that elected Donald Trump.
Yeah, a lot of those folks. You're absolutely right. So we'll have to see what continues to bubble up on Capitol Hill. Keep us updated.
Well,
Good to see you, Congressman.
Thank you for caring, Sharon. Thank you for caring, Shannon. Appreciate it.
Great to see you. All right, you heard him first, right here on Fox News at Night. Derek Maltz, the DEA agent who blew the whistle on the Obama administration's slow rolling of Hezbollah drug investigations. Tonight, the Justice Department is making a huge announcement. Maltz will be here to reveal what he thinks should happen next. Meanwhile, rumors about sexual misconduct by actor James Franco have become on-the-record testimonials. We'll discuss the story of the latest harassment in Hollywood. Plus, natural disaster hits Southern California, a report from the community that's been rocked by those devastating, deadly mudslides.
Terrifying noises. It sounded like 100 people with huge logs slamming into the house every 3 seconds.
Hundreds of rescue workers are slogging through knee-deep mud as they look for survivors and bodies amid devastating mudslides in Southern California. The death toll stands at 17, many others still missing. William Lajeunesse reports from Montecito, California.
At 3:30, it sounded like a freight train was driving. I came to investigate. I found a man in the street.
Robert LaRoche's neighbor needed help evacuating when the mudslide hit.
His father, his uncle, and his aunt out of houses that were sliding off of foundations and knee-deep in mud. It was scary.
Houses cut in half, trees uprooted, cars tossed like toys. This is just one of 6 areas in Montecito changed forever.
This is a neighborhood that no longer exists. The mudslide literally wiped a dozen homes right off the map. Their foundations are now covered in mud.
3 days into this disaster, the fire chief says search and rescue crews are running out of time.
Several factors that go into determining how long a victim will be viable.
Crews are busy restoring power, cleaning streets, hauling dirt, but there'll be no water for up to a month. Residents near areas that burned in last month's wildfires were under mandatory evacuation orders. Those further away were not.
Some people that initially asked to be evacuated elected to stay. And so, of course, they were left in place, but those that wanted to be moved out were moved out.
The county sent 200,000 emails warning of a possible mudslide and knocked on 7,000 doors in the mandatory evacuation zone the night before. But today it's being criticized by some for not using the emergency cell phone alert system until after the mudslide started.
They didn't tell us that something bad was going to happen like they knew. There's something there.
I don't think people didn't listen. I think people listened. I don't think it's people's fault. I don't think people. I think this is a natural disaster of biblical proportions.
You know, it may not look like it, but Montecito is the most exclusive neighborhood in one of California's wealthiest areas. Will people rebuild? The land is too valuable not to, but it could be weeks before many residents return. Shannon?
William Lajeunesse, thank you for the latest from California. Well, actor James Franco wore a Time's Up pin to the Golden Globes on Sunday night in support of the effort to fight workplace sexual harassment. And that reportedly spurred 5 women to tell the Los Angeles Times that they experienced inappropriate or sexually exploitative behavior by Franco. Megan Alexander of Inside Edition joins us with more on the story. Good evening, Megan. What do we know tonight?
Good evening, Shannon. Yes, actor James Franco, best known for movies like The Pineapple Express and 127 Hours, is the latest accused of sexual misconduct. Now, what triggered all this? You said it. An appearance of him Sunday night at the Golden Globes with the Time's Up pin on his tuxedo. Well, 5 women have come out to LA Times and revealed their stories. They range from professional and personal stories of how James Franco pressured them to do things they did not want to do. Now, several of the women say they were students at James Franco's acting school in Hollywood, now closed. And while working with him, they were pressured to either pose topless, pose nude. If they refused, they say that James Franco got very upset. And if they agreed to do so, sometimes the video would turn up on a pornography site. Now, the overall theme of this LA Times article is that James Franco was not someone you could say no to. And if you did, you risked damaging your career. Now, James Franco has responded. Tuesday night, he went on the Colbert Show and he said this, quote, "The things that I heard that were on Twitter are not accurate, but I completely support people coming out and being able to have a voice because they didn't have a voice for so long. If I've done something wrong, I will fix it. I have to."
Now, I mean, this is award season, Megan. He is up for other big awards in addition to what we saw from Sunday night.
He is. And Shannon, just tonight, Thursday night, he was a no-show at the Critics' Choice Awards, where he did take home the award for Best Actor for his role in The Disaster Artist. Now, Wednesday night, he was supposed to appear in New York City and lead a discussion on that film, and that event was canceled. So in terms of the larger conversation, what does this mean for him? I think being a no-show at both of these events reveals the pressure that he may be feeling this week.
Absolutely. Well, we know that every day it seems there's a new story, a new allegation. And he does say, as you noted there, that he doesn't want to discourage people from coming forward. But at least so far, he doesn't see himself in the accusations that are out there. So we'll follow the story. Megan, thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, coming up. You saw the story first here on Fox News at night. The Obama administration accused of turning a blind eye to Hezbollah's drug trafficking activities while it was pursuing the Iran nuke deal. Up next, the former DEA official at the center of the case responds to a major new development. Now, a follow-up on a story you saw first right here on Fox News at night. The Justice Department announcing today it is creating a task force to take a fresh look at drug trafficking and money laundering operations linked to the terror group Hezbollah. The news comes following a bombshell report that claims the Obama administration went easy on pursuing some of these Hezbollah drug peddling cases as it worked to lock in a nuclear deal with Iran. We want to welcome back Derek Malls, a former top DEA special agent who was involved in investigating and overseeing all of this Hezbollah money laundering cases. It's good to have you back.
Thank you, Shannon.
Okay, so there was this allegation in the Politico report that this may have been, some people thought, linked to the administration previously wanting to go easy on Iran or Hezbollah while they were working on the Iran nuke deal. Now, today, the Attorney General, Jeff Sessions, says this. He says, in an effort to protect Americans from both terrorism and the drug epidemic, the Justice Department will assemble leading investigators and prosecutors to ensure that all Project Cassandra investigations, that's what you were working on, as well as other related investigations, whether past or present, are given the needed resources and attention to come to their proper resolution. How did you react when you heard that?
Very excited and very thankful for the Attorney General's leadership. Actually, he's done more in like a week on this issue than has been done for years, so I'm very excited. I look forward to seeing the results, but actually the most beneficial thing for the U.S. national security is John Cronin will be leading the effort. He's a former prosecutor from Southern District of New York. I know a lot about him. He's very intelligent, very smart, and he understands law enforcement culture. He understands that you have to work together. But most importantly is that in 2010, the Southern District of New York broke down the walls between drugs and terrorism. That's what Preet Bharara, as the U.S. Attorney, did. Why did he do it? Because he wanted the best prosecutors in the world to work on the actual biggest threats to this country. So John is going to have the experience to come in and actually go after these people really hard.
Yeah, and you had spent years doing this and it uncovered many cases in which there were people who were actually indicted. I mean, you had put together cases of people who were funneling money and drugs in a way that was then giving millions of dollars to some of our worst enemies who were coming after us and many other free countries and individuals with sheer terrorism. That's what it was. It was being funded. But in many of these cases, you didn't get movement or resolve, even though people have been indicted.
Well, actually, one of the best examples is Ali Fayed. He was sitting in Czech Republic waiting to be extradited to the United States of America, just like previously when Victor Bout was extradited, because the U.S. government rallied around, the leadership got involved and went to the Thai government and said, we need Victor Bout back here. He's a national security threat. Well, Ali Fayed was in a hotel room in 2014 when I was still in charge, talking about how exciting it would be to hold up an American's head. Okay? Also talking about using surface-to-air missiles to take out helicopters down in Colombia. All right? So these people are the people that we need back here to go to jail. And this particular guy, he was released. He went back to Lebanon. They had a kidnapping. They kidnapped 5 Czechs in Lebanon, and the deal was let go of Ali Fayed and his co-defendant, and we'll let go of the hostages.
So despite your work, he has not been brought to justice. Now, last time you were here, I wanted to give you a chance to respond to some within the Obama administration who weren't happy about this story in Politico. Tommy Vietor, who used to be a spokesman for the NSC, said this: there are many reasonable critiques of Obama's foreign policy. The idea that he was soft on Hezbollah is not one of them. The story is so manufactured out of thin air that it's hard to push back, except to say that it's a figment of the imagination of 2 very flawed sources, you being one of those sources.
Okay, well, let me just say, I don't know Tommy, but he was a spokesperson. He's a screenwriter, like he's a speechwriter. He's not an operator. He doesn't know the details of these law enforcement investigations. Again, Jack Kelly, who was the lead DEA agent at my operation, and David Asher, and a bunch of other folks, very, very, high-level contractors involved with following the money around the world, okay? We know what happened. We were in the cases. These people that like to talk in the Beltway just because they have nothing better to do, they want to do tweets to be popular out there. But you know what? They didn't do the cases. They don't know what the details are.
Well, you do, and now it appears that many other people will know as well, because now that the Attorney General is launching this with John Cronin, in which you have a lot of confidence. We'll see where these cases go, but we hope that it will bring some resolution to the work that, now that you're retired, all the work you did leading up to this.
Well, I'm very confident in the current leadership that's out there involved with these cases. The key to this whole thing for success is, what's the objective of the task force? What are the resources? Who's going to be involved? And is there going to be directives from the top about cooperating and sharing between crime and terror cases?
We know that coordination is very important and something that you worked on. So we will watch it. We know you will as well. Derek, thanks for coming back.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate it.
Good to see you. All right, a Christmas tree getting a whole new life in Rome, chopped up for souvenirs and more, plus the major policy shift from the Trump administration you may not have heard about today, why it is sparking so much controversy. Our political panel with that next. This is a Fox News alert. We've been reporting on the firestorm over President Trump's criticism of immigration from blank hole countries. Apparently, in response to the outrage, the president tweeting about 8 minutes ago, the Democrats seem intent on having people and drugs pour into our country from the southern border, risking thousands of lives in the process. It is my duty to protect the lives and safety of all Americans. We must build a great wall, think merit, and end lottery and chain. USA! Exclamation point. All right, meanwhile, the Trump administration announcing it has secured $55 million in aid money for those who've been victims of ISIS atrocities, including Iraq's minority Christian population. During a trip to Iraq last month, Vice President Pence met directly with 100 Iraqi Christian leaders and even attended the rededication of a 3rd century church destroyed by ISIS. Well, the Trump administration announcing plans to allow states to test a work requirement for healthy Medicaid beneficiaries. There'd be a number of exemptions. We'll talk about those, but states are hopeful the move would help them to bring down the portion of Medicaid costs that they bear. So let's talk about it with Larry O'Connor, the host of WMAL in Washington, D.C., and associate opinion editor at The Washington Times, and Alex Eisenstadt, reporter from Politico. Great to see both of you tonight.
Great to see you. Good evening.
Okay, so we know that there will be some exemptions here. Those who are disabled, elderly, pregnant, children. If you're a caretaker, a primary caretaker for someone, if you're in school full time. Alex, there are a lot of exemptions, but there's also a lot of pushback from the left. Not happy about this. Representative Pallone says this today. The Trump administration's action is cruel and a clear violation of both the Medicaid statute and longstanding congressional intent for waivers. He said they're not meant to allow states to expand access. They're meant to allow to expand access, not to restrict it.
Right. Well, look, I mean, this is one of the interesting things that happened today was that there was all this attention on
everything else,
yeah, except for this. I mean, this was a major story. This is a major policy change, and what you're seeing is that the Trump administration is pursuing some long-held conservative goals, changing America's healthcare system, chipping away at the Affordable Care Act, and this is a big deal that's really going to have a real impact on the lives of a lot of people who rely on Medicaid going forward.
Yeah, and there are things that will count. You can be volunteering, you can be looking for a job, you can be in job training. There are all kinds of other things that will count towards this work requirement.
Yeah, and I don't know why this is controversial. I mean, honestly, this is so typical of the left sort of moving the goalposts on what is acceptable behavior and what our social safety net is supposed to be. It's supposed to be that, a safety net to help those who can't help themselves. The American people are very generous, we're very kind and loving. But we don't want that safety net to become a hammock where people just sort of hang out and rest. When we first set up these programs, programs, it was supposed to be for all of those people who are getting the exemptions, Shannon, the elderly and the young and pregnant and things like that. Not for people who are making up to 4 times the poverty level. When Obamacare came in and expanded these benefits for people at that level, that was the rewriting of the original intent of Medicaid. And this is not the president mandating that states do this. He's allowing states to do this. Let states do that. Let's see if it works. I think most Americans would like people who are getting a benefit like this to actually attempt to get a job.
Well, and the administration says that this came to them from 10 states who requested and said, we want to have a chance to do this. So they have to, the federal government has to sign off on these things. They can't just go willy-nilly. Seema Verma, who is the administrator of the Federal Centers for Medicaid and Medicare, said this: believing that community engagement requirements do not support or promote the objectives of Medicaid is a tragic example of the soft bigotry of low expectations consistently espoused by the prior administration. Those days are over. And, Alex, that's just not well received on the left.
Well, it's not. But, here's the thing. President Trump campaigned on undoing large amounts of Obamacare, and that's exactly what he's doing as he's governing. And so it's interesting to watch and see how this year is going to continue to play out, because as we get closer to the midterms, you're just going to see the president come under a lot of pressure from those on the right to see, to hold him to account, to say, did you follow through on your campaign promises? He's trying to do that right now.
By the way, I'm so confused by, I try to pay attention and remember the rhetoric from the left whenever these social programs are pushed down our throats the way Obamacare was. When Medicaid was expanded, we were told that these were good, hardworking American people. They all have jobs, but they don't get health benefits because of the evil corporations that they work for that won't provide them. So why is this a problem? If they all have jobs, but they just doesn't have health care, they'll continue to get their Medicaid. They just need to have a job.
Well, we'll see how it plays out in these states. And if it does well, you got to imagine other states are going to get in on this as well. But if it doesn't, then maybe not. All right, gentlemen, good to see you both.
Good to see you. Good evening. Thanks.
More news next. Remember we told you about Rome's Charlie Brown-looking Christmas tree? Well, it's getting some new life. The tree, named Spalaccio, which means baldy in English, will be chopped down for souvenirs and will also be turned into a hut where mothers can breastfeed their babies. The city's mayor says the tree won the hearts of many and hopes its new purpose will show Rome as a model for recycling. Most watched, most trusted, and most grateful you spent the evening with us. Good night from Washington. I'm Shannon Bream.